rebels and troublemakers to stand out. Marginalized with voices making us so proud. For identity in the industry, we all shout. So many women empowered making them.
Happy New Year! Happy New Year, my people. Nicci and I hope everybody had a fantastic holiday. We are getting started again on our WOCU podcast, WOCU Podcast 2026. Hold on.
The Hollywood yelling and one system try to charge her for speaking up. Left behind speeding up, passing not even enough. Needing no introduction, but she got a theme.
Hopefully it will be a wonderful 2026 for everybody going forward. We're gonna get messy today. We got publicists up here. We're gonna get messy. We're gonna talk about Hollywood mess.
So today we've got a powerhouse duo who know how to spill the tea and possibly unspill the tea. We have Amy Malone and Lana Walker. Thank you so much for coming and taking the time out to chat with us and get messy. Everybody, welcome to the WOCU pod. We are diving into the world of Hollywood publicists, aka the magicians who turn scandals into spin, nobody's into stars, and no comment into narratives. Cheryl is going to start by giving you a little tea on our guests, and then we'll get into it, picking their brains, see if we can pry out a few secrets. Let's see how much they're actually willing to spill. Spoiler alert, probably not enough, but we'll try. Cheryl?
Thank you, Nicci. My first up is my friend, Lana Walker. From Melissa Etheridge to Queen Latifah in music, Donnie Wahlberg to Chris Ludacris Bridges and Colson Baker, a.k.a. Machine Gun Kelly, Lana Walker has worked in publicity and communications, guiding many of yesteryear and today's hottest entertainers over her 30-plus year career. She grew up in beautiful, sunny Los Angeles and in and around the entertainment industry, so it was no surprise that after attending the prestigious Tulane University in New Orleans, she would return to California and easily slide into Hollywood, working as a personal assistant, live-in nanny to Oscar-nominated director Mark Rydell, working on For the Boys with Bette Midler. From there, she would seamlessly move between film, television, and music, working with top-tier actors, musicians, producers, and companies, as well as taking on special projects from Comic-Con to Dancing with the Stars, China Phillips and Brandy Norwood, as well as the USO chairman of the Joint Chiefs Holiday Tour with Admiral McMullen. Whether in management or publicity roles, Lana has preserved and crafted an impressive career filled with major milestone celebrations, including Stevie Wonder American Express Charge Against Hunger Tour, the launch of the Hulu drama series Reasonable Doubt, and the 1619 Project, as well as the official International Women's Day celebration in Beverly Hills from 2022 to 2025. I have been going for the last 3 years. Some of her career highlights include strategizing and implementing press campaigns for Brooks and Dunn, Usher, Sarah McLachlan in her inaugural Lilith Fair tour, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Henry Rollins spoken word, reality star Lauren Conrad, Boyz II Men, TLC, Tashina Arnold, comedian Ada Rodriguez, Alan Jackson, like the list goes on and on. Music labels, Motown, Bad Boy, Arista Records, as well as the launch of Onyx Collective and pregame sports tech companies, to name a few. Currently residing between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, Lana continues to create innovative campaigns with artists and companies in music, sports, television, film, as well as being a proud board member of the Alliance of Women Directors, the Black Reel Awards, the Hollywood Creative Alliance, Black Public Relations Society of LA, and the consultant for the Gina Davis Institute and African American Film Critics Association. Give it up for Lana Walker.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yes, and just so you'll know, all of that is over 35 plus years. So it only sounds impressive when you don't aggregate it over those years.
It's still impressive. And then we have Amy Malone. So full disclosure, Amy Malone is a publicist for Women of Color Unite, a board member, and my publicist. I'm just going to say it. She has her hands full with me. I love you, Amy. I love you. I love you. Amy Malone is a natural communicator who takes pride in working with clients to elevate their name and brand recognition through precise messaging, innovative campaigns, and seamless execution. This combination allows her to help others communicate their thoughts, shape their images, and share their stories. She founded Girl in Charge Public Relations in 2005 after being an entertainment publicist for several years and noticing a lack of African American female representation in Hollywood, which is why I'm one of her clients. Now, over 20 years later, she has worked with some of the entertainment's top A-listers and expanded from entertainment to cause-driven campaigns and corporate communications. Again, Amy is a board member of Women of Color Unite and our publicist. She is also the publicist for the Pan-African Film Festival as well. God damn, I have two incredible Black women on my stage. Hey, Amy.
Oh, hey, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to a dope conversation with a lot of cursing. I'm just letting you guys know. Cheryl curses a lot.
She's not the only one.
A lot of MFs. And then Nicci. Oh, yes. So, yeah. Yeah, this is going to be fun.
So I'm going to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker for you guys and get your opinions. What is the worst public relations disaster you have ever seen, and why is it Blake Lively?
I would have to say that while I love seeing the evolution of this, especially because of the interplay with the publicity aspect, unfortunately, that would not be my my worst public relations nightmare. It would probably be while I'm sitting in front of the Roxbury, waiting for an Outcast party to happen, when all of a sudden everybody starts running out because my other #1 artist, Biggie, has just been shot. So that probably, how to smile and keep it going with the media for an Outcast party at Roxbury, a couple of miles away, was the most immediate how to handle with a smile but still caring. That's my biggest. How about you?
Wait, we can't let that one slide. Say the fuck what, Lana? Like,
Cheryl.
Yes, my
Cheryl,
3 biggest artists are dead, and that would be Biggie, Tupac, and Whitney. So I've had a really good career, and been very fortunate to be there, especially during the 90s when hip hop and music was growing, and specifically the record labels were spending a lot of money with Black music, which they had previously ignored in the 70s and the 80s, and stolen, quite frankly, in the 60s. So when I came in, there was a lot of change and a lot of different people. So between meeting Tupac as a member of Digital Underground, which was one of the first groups I represented, and then working at Arista Records and Bad Boy during the time of Biggie. And funny enough, this industry is always about relationships, and there were a lot of things that happened that weekend, but I was able to cement a great relationship with a then LA Times writer, Cheo Coker, who was supposed to be in the car with Biggie finishing up an interview for LA Times that weekend. And things changed, the schedule changed. And so we were at the Outcast party, or I was at the Outcast party rather, waiting for Biggie, who was an hour and a half late. So, timing is everything. And so when you ask that question, I agree that right now, that is probably one of the hugest things that immediately tests everybody in PR, because there were so many things that are being thrown around behind the Blake Lively and the Baldoni. But for my career, being at the front of the world famous Roxbury with a clipboard, and then all of a sudden, the head of your label and all the top C executives are running out, and the press is going, what? That for me was probably a test, because how do you do that? How do you answer the question not truthfully enough to keep them there and focused on the Outcast listening session that I'm supposed to be, knowing that the news will be breaking in a couple of hours of what's going on anyway. So, and that's just one of those things, quite frankly, as a publicist, that, it's one of those once in a lifetime experiences that I just remember the flurry of people and just saying, okay, I'm here. I'm holding it down, knowing that my boss, the top bosses were going to be making their way to the hospital to stand guard over there. And knowing that in the chain of command that I've got to then compartmentalize and focus on this, knowing that the questions will be coming, knowing that I have no answers.
Yeah, I remember being on the flip side of that interaction in Vegas when I was standing at a club and the word came in that Tupac had been shot.
Yes.
And how things went crazy and people were like freaking out. And, it was pre-social media, so there was no information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was cell phone, tag, not very good.
Yeah, love to start by asking about like your first PR gig and how crazy was it for you?
My first gig, actually in PR, I got very lucky because after I left the live-in nanny and assistant gig, which it was a great gig coming out of college, but I was never going to be a live-in nanny, and some people might even say that being a live-in nanny that time, and then I tried it again in my career, is the reason I don't have kids now. So for me, it was a great experience, but moving from there, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I went and I did a mindless job as a receptionist at a wonderful place called the Massage Therapy Center over on Sawtell in California. And I was working there for a couple of months, and one of their regular clients who came in to get massages, she's actually she's my first mentor, a beautiful woman by the name of Terry Davis. And she was working in management. And after building a rapport with her, she basically said, "You're too young to be here not using your brain. What are you doing?" And I have been fortunate enough in my career to have numerous people in my life who are allies and advocates and mentors who at times when I would have been lazy, they kind of kicked me to the curb and said, no, you've got to continue to tax yourself and continue to grow and continue to learn. And so that's what she did. She said, you're sitting up here reading romance novels and, doing a job that's not taxing you, not going anywhere. And she brought me into the office to interview as an assistant. And I didn't really know anything about it, but I'm like, sure, okay. And it was a management company with Norman Nixon and an older gentleman by the name of Raymond Katz. And Raymond Katz was best known for the Gabor sisters, Jaja and Ava Gabor. And Norman Nixon, of course, his wife, Debbie Allen. We had some dancers, we had some rappers. And so that was kind of like my first introduction into management and PR, because through that, I got to know the publicists real well. And management, for anybody who's ever tried management is the one job that just kind of touches on every single thing. And having been taught by the managers of the artists of the 50s and 60s and 70s, it's very, very it was the way it was taught to me is very, very all consuming and all encompassing, in so much as your manager is there. They're your everything. They're your coach. They're there. If your dog gets sick, they're there. If you need to get a shot for VD while you're on the road, they're there for that too. So the management part of it really, really helped me to learn the PR part and getting to know the publicists of all the different artists. So I kind of considered that my first real gig, but the first real gig was quite frankly the group public relations with Bob Gibson and Gary Stromberg and Ramon Hervé, before he married Vanessa Williams, and the princess of the USA and the Miss Universe. And that was the group public relations. They were famous for doing the 1970s Queen Bash. So I could not have asked for better publicists who basically on day one sat me down with what then was a Bacon's Rolodex, which had all of the different outlets, and said, Digital Underground are on tour. Look up all of the cities and try and see if you can't get people and offer them tickets to come out on tour. And that was my first gig in PR. And that really, really helped to shape how I would look at the game, starting from basics, starting from everybody starts at the ground level, and you start with your community knowing about you and your community supporting you, and then you grow bigger. And I think a lot of times what today's young people make the mistake at is, let me go get one Today Show hit. And I got to tell you, if you get a Chicago Times and a Philly Tribune, if you can get 5 to 10 of those local newspapers, those will go further for you and for your client, and just for what you want to do and where you want to be. Those have the lasting impressions. No, I'm still not good at compartmentalization. I will say that I still tend to want to be everything to all. And if it's in my purview, not, of course, not stuff that I can't do, but if it's in my purview and I've touched on it, or I know someone who can, I think that is something definitely that people behind the scenes that last more than a decade in Hollywood, there's always a little bit of that people pleaser. And it's just a matter of owning that within yourself. And if you can do that, then I find that I walked away with really positive experiences going head to head with a Harvey Weinstein. I felt like I got his respect in a time and a place during the 90s and the 2000s, quite frankly, when obviously looking back, he wasn't respecting all. But I think I walked into it demanding that certain level. And that just comes back to, understanding that even when you make mistakes, even when you don't know, I mean, the best of the best put it in their books. Yes, LA Laker Norm Nixon. Yes, even when you don't know, the best of the best say, yes, I can roller skate, and then you put on roller skates and you try it because you weren't sure that you couldn't until you put them on. So I approach everything with, if I haven't done it yet, that's just a matter of semantics, because I'm going to go forward and I'm going to be great at everything until I'm not.
Okay. Amy, what was your first gig in PR?
So I started, it wasn't really PR. Back there used to be a magazine called BRE Magazine, Black Radio Exclusive. And they had a huge conference every year, the BRE conference every year. And that was for Black radio. And I worked there, started as a receptionist for BRE magazine, and started working in their PR department, and had an opportunity at that time to work with a lot of the upcoming hip hop artists, and some of our R&B legends that are, R&B people that are legends now, and started just kind of learning the community. And I was 19, I believe, at that time. And went from working, as a receptionist to assisting with putting on the conference and working with the media, and just kind of gravitated to working in the PR department. And I ended up leaving there and going to Capitol Records. I happened to be at Capitol when Selena, that was one of my first gigs working in radio, was I think I was there for maybe a week, and Selena got killed. And so that, I was kind of thrown into a crisis immediately. And, working with that in such a big crisis, it kind of helped me to cut my teeth at that time. And I moved from Capitol to, they had a small subsidiary called IRS Records. In IRS, we had people like Black Sabbath, the Go-Go's. We had alternative music at that time. Like I said, the Go-Go's, English Beat, people like that. And so I worked really, and it's interesting, I didn't work with a lot of Black artists and with my community for the first couple of years of my career, which I look back now and I'm glad that I had an opportunity to work with various genres, because I saw the money that was put um, into artists, with the labels that were white artists, as in comparison to those that were not, that were R&B and rap. I saw the way that the money was spent, and it was just interesting to me, because I always made a mental note of the way that we were promoting and doing PR for various artists, and it made me, even at a young age, I was early 20s at that time, it made me understand that there was a disparity there. And I wanted to address that disparity in some way. So I continued. I mean, at that time, it was my dream to work for like a BET, because I felt like, oh my gosh, that's where all of, the Black artists are, or working for a rap label. I remember, just that was a desire for me at that time. But I'm thankful that that did not happen, because it allowed me to work with in various genres, and see how we worked on artists, and how we valued artists, and how and how some artists were not valued, and we didn't put a lot of money, and there was not a lot. I'm not going to say we, but the organizations I was working with at the time didn't put as much money behind people who look like me. So after leaving IRS, I moved on to CBS television. I worked at CBS television for several years, on shows such as Everybody Loves Raymond, Cosby. It was Cosby at the time. It wasn't the Cosby Show. It was when the spinoff of He and Felicia. Worked at CBS for several years. Left CBS, went on to the Steve Harvey Morning Show, worked on the morning show, booking their booking talent for the show, and left Steve Harvey, went on to a boutique agency called It Girl PR, and worked there for a while, and realized, you know what, I can do this. And by that time, I had built up a really nice Rolodex. And I say Rolodex because then it was a Rolodex. We had cards, and you traveled around with all these. You had all these cards, and you were calling people, and you were making press kits and all of that, and sending things out. It was a really good time. It's easier now, but I loved that time, because you really were personal and had personal relationships with individuals in entertainment. So I went on to work there with New Edition. I worked with Chingy and Juvenile, DJ Quick, a couple of different people, Mickey Howard, and left there, created Girl in Charge, and have been doing it ever since.
And what
And
is
then I'm
your
not sure.
worst
So
public
my
relations
worst.
disaster?
So I was representing at the time a huge televangelist. She's a female televangelist. And at that time she was a televangelist selling out, like, well, I won't say selling out, but her conferences had around 20 to 30,000 people, easily would go out of town and have 100,000 in an arena. And she was at the top of her game. She was on the front of Essence magazine. And I got a call from her in the middle of the night that her husband, they had an altercation or a fight at a hotel, and people saw it. She had been abused, and woke up, and it was all over the news. And we had to combat it, because once that came out, just a lot of things, started coming out about their relationship and her, and it became really, really nasty. So I will say that was the biggest crisis in that moment, because I had someone who really didn't want to own up to some things that were going on in her life, but we had to, but the public saw her as this, and she was, don't get me wrong, was a person who was preaching and speaking, and they were following her. But unfortunately, when you have something like this going on and you have another person who is basically sharing all of the nasty things about your client and the things that you don't want the public to know, that came out, and it was a shit show, to say the least. There was a lot of crisis management. There was a lot of combating that, but yeah, that was I would say is my biggest at the time.
I was just going to say, Amy, it wasn't when one of your clients was doxxed and had to move out of their house, and somebody went after them on Twitter. I thought maybe that was it, but the other one seems worse.
No, this one was huge. It was all over. It was everywhere. Trust, everyone was talking about it, and it was a mess.
She's not going to spill the tea.
It's not hard to look up. That one is not hard to look up at all.
So, somebody in the audience is looking it up right now for me.
How is it?
Juanita Bynum.
It was Juanita Bynum. And it was Juanita Bynum, and she was at the time with TD Jakes, and they were literally selling out 100,000 seat arenas.
I love the internet, man. 5.5 seconds into that conversation, I got people telling me who it was. So have you ever worked for a celebrity or a project where you had to pretend you were way more excited about than you really were? Like, your instinct whenever you're near them is just to roll your eyes, but you know that you can't.
Absolutely. Earlier in my career, I was in a position where I was learning, and I had to take on projects that I I didn't like the person very much, or the brand or the music, but it didn't matter because my job was to sell a project, to create a narrative, was to create an image and sell that image. So no, it's okay. I've worked for a lot of projects, and on a lot of projects, and with individuals that I didn't care for that much early on. Now I'm thankful that I don't have to do that. And with time and with experience, I can now pick and choose those projects and individuals that I would like to work with. But, as a publicist, I felt like in the beginning, I came from a time where you did the work, you grind, and it wasn't the luxury of, oh, well, I don't like this person, or I don't listen to this kind of music. I didn't listen to Black Sabbath when I rep Black Sabbath. But I learned what needed to be done, and was able to do, to work with the guys and do the work, and hey, it was a good time. And the Go-Go's, and with all of their issues, yeah, it was a good time though.
Lana?
Yes, of course. It's been a long time. I stopped doing that a while back, but yes, absolutely. I couldn't stand Boyz II Men the last 3 months working at Motown. They were feeling themselves. They were a top group in the world and whatnot, and they were complete jerks. Or what I like to say, for about a decade, until someone said, that's just not nice. I used to always say to people when they'd say, well, what does a publicist do? I would say, well, you remember Boyz II Men? Yeah, 4 lovely, clean-cut guys from Philly. Yeah, you'd let your daughter date them, right? Yeah, 3 out of 4 were assholes. And you didn't know that. So that's the job of a publicist. Ha. And so, yeah, you meet artists at different points in their career. So some of them, quite frankly, and I've always given artists space and grace to understand that in this entertainment industry where people are just kissing your ass, and you all of a sudden, men, excuse my language, Amy, but men, you now have access to pussy that you would never have access to in your entire lifetime. And women the same way on the back of on the other Ford. So, I understand how the entertainment industry brings all of these forces into you that changes, that can change how you're looking at things, how you respond to people and whatnot. But as a wide-eyed young Sean wasn't, Sean Stockman. But as a wide-eyed young 21, 22, 23-year-old, it was hard to deal with. They're feeling themselves. I'm on the road. I'm the road publicist. But my mind, I'm not the road publicist for New York and all the big cities. No, I'm going to Boise, Idaho. I'm up in Pocatello. I'm up in all of the small places, Laramie, Wyoming, beautiful place. And you don't know the power until you're there with a group like that, where you're in a town with 135,000 capacity and you're in a venue of 75,000 and it's sold out. And everybody in that town is there. That power, and I won't ever take it away from anybody who who gets like this, especially when you're young. Brad, I think it's George Clooney who says, had he hit fame when he was young, he would have been shooting cocaine into his eyeballs. Like, there's a certain amount of stupidity that is encouraged and that's around you, and you get the drugs for free. Yes, but while they never did that, and they certainly weren't known for that, they had their egos, as they've said in all the VH1s and everything. And I was on the road as a record label rep. And anybody who knows that, when you're on the record label rep, anytime a group gets mad at the record label, well, the record label rep is the person who gets it. So that was probably one of my heart ones. But I was also known to talk back to clients, quite frankly, and also, quite frankly, for the last 20 years, I've been known as a publicist who fires clients. So if I can get fired, I never understood why me letting them go wasn't me firing them, and yet them letting me go was them firing me. I thought it was always, we're working together until we don't want to work together. And if somebody just needs to use the word fired, work it out. I can fire you and you can fire me at any given time. So yes, I would say there are also people, very early on, I was in management with a group called Shy, and I saw them go out, become dicks, then now no longer become dicks and come back down and whatnot. And, still talk to a couple of them and am friendly with them. And they're all wonderful people who have kids and families and all that stuff and doing their own thing. So it really just, you meet people at different times and you give them space and grace to look back and say, yeah, when you hit it big, you lost your stuff. And I'm not going to say I didn't have my moments of don't mess with me as well. But, everybody at some point or another in what I do, there's always a moment for you to be an ass, unfortunately. And I don't necessarily term you an ass just because that one time, the situation was set up. But yeah, after a couple of times, after a couple of years, I like to say there are people that I met at celebrity basketball games in the 90s who have grown up and, even hit the big Oscar, Grammy, Emmy, some of them a combination. And when I see them in their eyes, they're not the same person that I used to hang out with, back in 1991 when they were just starting and I was just starting. But by the same token, the same person I met in the 90s who was an assistant at Teen People is now one of the co-editor-in-chief over at Hollywood Reporter, and she's lovely. So you build the relationships with the people as they let you and as you let them, and you give space and grace. But I always like to say, after about 6 to 8 years, you got to come back. And I need to see some clarity back in your eyes, or I'm just going to look across you, at the room at your Oscar-winning movie and say, nah, I don't mess with him anymore. He's still out to lunch, and I don't have to deal with that.
I just want to say before Nicci jumps in, so we're talking dicks, pussy, ass, and motherfuckers today.
Oh, no, that was just me. No, that was just me. And it was all in one, all under one context. I can come up with some more stuff. Just give me another topic.
You were talking about people that start off good, go bad, possibly come back to good. But one of my, my first second AD job was Chris Brown's very first video. And that was the sweetest child, the hardest worker. And then many years later, after all the scandals, I worked with him again, and there's something gone. Like, he got so broken by the whole system that I don't see that light in him anymore.
Just to jump in on that, Nicci, if we're going to speak about Chris, I'm with you. I remember Chris, which is very interesting. Chingy, a rapper back when, was larger. I mean, he was the big name at that time, and Chris was just coming coming into the game. And I took Chingy in. They were on a bill together, and Chingy was the headliner. And Chris was so sweet. Like you said, he was such a sweetheart, very kind, very passionate and humble about the business. And I remember then, like, this is a very special young man. And then years later, working with him again, and I still thought he was a really kind young man, but this was after, the everything with Rihanna, and I even remember just working with Rihanna when she first came out, and she was, was a feisty young lady, very sweet, but a very feisty young lady as well. But I remember how sad I was because it felt like, something was taken from these young people, and that light will, I don't know if that would ever be able to be given back. The talent can't be taken. But what was in them, or what was in him, I will say, I agree with you. It seemed like something changed, of course. But then recently I connected, and I saw that light back for me. I saw it again. And the humility was still there, very kind, but
That humility was always kind of there, even the second time and the third time that I worked with him on set. Always still really kind to everybody. It's just, I don't know, the excitement, or the joy of being on set. And because I mean, I work on music videos, so I don't see them in the studio or on tour, but the excitement and stuff like that just seemed to be gone.
There are interconnected stories that I think, because I watched the industry bury him regarding the Rihanna thing, even though 80% of us was like, oh yeah, we know she popped him first at least twice. But the industry, there's a no format, no hit format. A woman can basically knock a man over the head with and he's supposed to just take it depending upon who it is, where it is in the situation. I watched the industry tear him down in that way. But I have to say, there were a couple of incidents, because his publicist, Wendy Washington, who I'm sure you know, Amy,
yes.
his publicist who was going through that, is one of my business partners now. And so there were certain things that I would call her. He went to an after Grammy party. And this was before the Rihanna incident. He went to an after Grammy party that was sponsored by a liquor company. And as you know, if you're under 21, you cannot be pictured walking down a red carpet with a liquor company behind you. He was not understanding about that and made a big stink about that, so much so that he enlisted, with the help of Wendy, and named and shamed, thought he was naming and shaming a buddy of mine in New York Post about how they wouldn't let him into this party. Now, when I called her, what I said is, first of all, you've turned my girlfriend into a non-fan now. And she was a fan. And she and I have a running joke that I know all of the go-go's and white music that I, as a Black woman, should not be knowing. And she knows all of the lyrics to Ludacris and Jay-Z, all of the Black lyrics that she shouldn't be knowing. So she's the Black version of me in a white body with freckles. And what I was getting was, what I had to tell my girlfriend is, you just basically dissed the right hand to Jeffrey Katzenberg for the Motion Picture TV Fund Association, and the right hand who also works with Adam Shankman, the director, who just did this. And basically, I heard from about 5 or 6 different white Hollywood contacts that he was burning before the Rihanna incident. So the humility, I don't know how far that goes. I just know that, unfortunately, when all of that went down, what I did is I shook my head and I said, you just gave a huge segment of Hollywood the excuse to basically turn their nose at you, which they had been looking for based upon these other little things that I'd been hearing. It sucks, because we definitely get penalized, and a comedian using the N-word can come back again and again and again. It really doesn't matter. But I do know that he turned off several folks personally that I know that would have come to his term in very high positions in Hollywood, that those doors closed forever. And that really sucked.
Speaking of people
I
that
agree.
had PR, and really like kept their squeaky clean image while being complete disasters, the Go-Go's. Because we all know they were a complete disaster.
Absolutely. I don't think you know how much of a disaster.
I saw the documentary. I kind of know.
Yes. Well, so I have a little grace sometimes when it comes to individuals that I know, they were I hate to say it, but complete nut jobs, brilliant musicians, but egos, addiction made them just horrible at the time to work with because, you didn't have a whole person. You were always dealing with someone, 1 to 2 people who just came completely smashed most of the time. Or, we had Belinda, who of course was pushed to the forefront, who had an ego, who was the star, and it just was a recipe for disaster. So, anytime they'd have to come into the label, anytime, we knew we were doing a show. And again, remember, this was early on in my career. So I didn't have some of the tools that I have now to address. I thought, you just want to make them happy. I at the time, I didn't realize being a publicist was really controlling their image and making sure that they understood, if you are an asshole to this waiter or this person who's helping, and then they share that information, it just becomes a snowball effect, and everyone knows everything you've done. If you act an idiot at a hotel and you leave the room completely trashed and you were evil to everyone, that's going to get out. And it got out, and everyone pretty much knew their behavior. But it was excused because as Lana said, when you have that kind of money, when you have that kind of following, when you have a machine behind you that's going to protect you, and all they're worried about is the dollars and the numbers, and are you selling out? There is no accountability on their end. So, I saw a group that was brilliant just basically walk away from each other and say, we hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. We all hate her. you know, you hate each other. And then we all hate Belinda together collectively. So yeah, it was unfortunate, but.
So the owner, Christopher Boozy, has his popcorn out. I know he's working right now, but we're all here for the mess. Oh, here he comes. Okay. I'm gonna make you co-host. Hey, Christopher Boozy.
Hey, what's going on? I do have one question for both you and Lana. Now in the social media era, where things are a lot crazier, what are some of the challenges you face now as a publicist that you didn't have to face in in the 90s and the early 2000s? And thanks again for being here.
Okay, I think for me, it's reaching an audience. I mean, there's two aspects that I'll come at that answer. And thank you for that question. Thank you for hosting us, and thank you for having this. It really is. It's so much. It's so much more about niche, because there's so many more outlets now with regards to publicity and with regards to what's reaching the people, who it's reaching. So just in pure numbers, and also it's so different from when we came up and when we came in, because back then, if your voicemail box was full or you didn't answer somebody, that was firing. That was firing. And about 15 years ago, I started noticing the New York no, as it's been coined, which is I don't have to get back to you unless I want to engage. And when that became acceptable for press, for media outlets, for not the big editors in chiefs, but the smaller ones, when that became acceptable, for even that small time staff reporter. Now, I do recognize that the numbers are no longer with them, but it just used to be a matter of building relationships as opposed to the spaghetti on the wall, or, it really is now more about relationships. And then for me personally, before I pass it over to Amy, I deal every day with my own sense of hypocrisy as a media person, as a publicist, and without going into too much, as a 35-year Republican, I am appalled at how our political press has become propaganda. And when you read the numbers in things like the Shorenstein report, which tells you that for every one negative article on Trump, there was 45 on Hillary Clinton. When you read that during the week of June 2nd through the June 13th, the press decided to spend 77% of their time focused on Hunter Biden and only 3% of their time on Biden and Kamala and what they had done for us, and another 7% of that time focused on Trump and what he's doing now, which was he was threatening to use the DOJ to go after his opponents, which he's doing now. When you look at what our press has become, I personally have issues with my hypocrisy in just dealing with the arts and entertainment side. And so that personally has become harder and harder and harder. And in fact, I had a little event. I had some clients who we went up for the New York Times Black ERG. And we did a little Christmas thing, and we took up some Black talent, Jasmine Guy and TC Carter, and Dorian Wilson. And we went up there and we were dealing with the Black ERGs for Hearst, New York Times, and for Business Insider. And I got into a conversation with one of the ladies and I said, you're just not going to tell me that, you guys doing so many stories, or even just recently, 15 to 1,600 different people protesting in cities and states across the country, and New York Times puts it on page 18 below the fold. So I think that there's two things. There's an abundance of niche, and then quite frankly, our mainstream, getting to that arts and entertainment section is hard, because you got to go through a lot of swall, in my opinion.
I heard Lana, her answer was spot on. I mean, there was a time where you had so many media outlets that you could pitch to. You could, we were not pigeonholed the way we are now. The lack of media outlets, the lack of news outlets that you have to pitch to now. We don't have the magazines anymore, a lot of the radio anymore. Just the journalists we used to be able to pitch to and get these stories out. We don't have that anymore because social media has changed the way things are done. And I completely agree with what she just said. It's a shame to me, because if you don't have a machine behind you, if you are not one of the big stars, getting a story about your talent is very difficult now. It's very difficult, where we used to be able to reach out to the smaller publications, and you'd have your regional, you had, your national, electronic and print and all that. We don't have that anymore. But it's sad that we don't have that anymore, because there's so many talented people that are being ignored, and you keep getting these same stories over and over and over again about the same individuals. And if it's Black talent, you are definitely, now that number is even dropped even smaller. So that is unfortunate, because we have some very talented people right now, young actors and actresses coming up, musicians that are coming up, and they don't get the love that they have now. I flip it and say that social media has given an avenue and a platform for us to be able to share and to give information about these individuals. But I hate the fact that our news media has changed so much, and it's almost everything is almost a pay to play, or it is you have to be associated with one of the large networks or one of the studios, or and we don't have as many record labels anymore. So the labels, it's just a very different time, and it's unfortunate. But I also look at our, I say this too, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but we have some of our talent, our A-list talent, our A-B list, I'll say that, as soon as they get a big project, or as soon as they move into a space where they can demand the publicist, or they can demand to have their, the person they choose, they move to one of the big agencies. And then so now you have publicists who are, people being represented by somebody who doesn't look like them, doesn't respect Black media, doesn't respect Black events, doesn't respect the Black experience at all. And so, those your Denzels and your Violas, or your Michael B. Jordans, and people such as that, unless you get to them individually, it's very hard to book them or have them support Black, Black media, Black events, and really come face to face with their Black audience.
Do you find now that with social media, you also have like the problem that like how quickly things come pop up, that like, is it hard to get a grasp of it? But then at the same time, you also have a dearth of people that are working in your industry that don't do the research, don't know what they're doing, a la, that horrible woman that just babyface on the red carpet. Um, you have these people that are getting your jobs, or not your jobs, but like, are coming up as publicists or journalists, and really don't have any sort of background other than, hi, I was popular on social media.
There's a lack of respect, and there is no need. They don't feel a need to do research on anyone that is not part of that A-list crowd. They don't feel a need to know who they'll lump everyone together. How many times do people, not only like what they did to Babyface, but I've seen media outlets, news outlets, that put the wrong person's face up. Because, don't even take the time to see, is this Viola Davis, or is this, Kerry Washington, or someone else? Like, they just don't take the time, which means they don't value the talent. And that's a problem. That they don't, there is no integrity, well, I'll say this, the lack of integrity in journalism is showing its face right now. And there's not a lot of it. That's, and quick, and if you are able to put out a story on social media, it catches fire. It doesn't have to have any facts to it. There is a website right now that kills somebody every week. People that are not dead, but they put it out there every week just because they can. And it doesn't and it catches fire, and and then you have somebody else to come back and say, well, no, this person is not dead, or whatever. This is just a result of where we are with, there being a lack of integrity in journalism, and with our media outlets, and utilizing social media as our news platform. And that cannot happen, because there's no checks and balances there.
I mean, I also want to say, though, before the Babyface thing happened, I was booted out of the backstage at a Grammy event decades ago. It was a special event, and John Mayer performed with B.B. King, and I grew up with B.B. King. And I was backstage when a reporter from a mainstream People magazine, a mainstream magazine, and the young reporter, asked B.B. King what it was like for him to perform with the great John Mayer. And excuse my language, Amy, but I said, are you fucking kidding me? That came roaring out of my mouth before I could stop it. Needless to say, I haven't been invited backstage from my girlfriend to a Grammy show ever, but I just felt that was inappropriate. And I'm glad that John Mayer jumped up and said, I would like to take this question, and answered it for him, because it truly is, the same thing happened. Esquire magazine about 10 years ago, did a Oscars best of list. And I think they put Marty at number 35 and said something about how they had never seen it. Now, this is a magazine. Put how they had never seen the movie, but Ernest Borgnine was in red, so it must be cool. Like, I mean, like, how do you get away with that? And if it's not AI, then how is that person still getting a paycheck? Yes. So, the fact though that AI doesn't help me feel better. AI, when you hear that AI is now making up stuff. A lawyer tried to use AI and it found that it had made up statues so he could, win his case. When AI is responsible for, I believe there's 12 to 15 cases of Black men pulled out of their beds and dragged across state lines because some local sheriff's office AI has identified him and he hasn't even been in that state. So I'm not too much of a fan of AI and the fact that the media are firing a lot of people and going to use AI when AI has already been proven racist, specifically towards Black and brown. I don't have a lot of faith in where we're going, quite frankly, when journalism. And then just one last thing, look it up. The head of Columbia journalism, Jelani Cobb, is on record now. He told his class of journalism students to stop. He's basically telling them to censor themselves at this point. And we're in trouble when that's happening. Just as a publicist, also as people, but also as a publicist, as a Black female publicist with 30 plus years, we're at a time point that we've never been at. And I think that, I would look at everybody and say, as a community, make sure that you look around and really look at what is happening to us, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. And where we're going as a society. I love what I do. I'm so glad at the time I got to do it. If I had to come into publicity now, I can honestly say I wouldn't be doing it.
But I just wanted to say, to Amy's point, to everybody's point, right, regarding Black people in the industry, when we at Women of Color Unite partnered with Aftershock, and I will never forget this. So we were waiting, Amy was working with their publicists, and they thought it was going to be huge, right? This huge story. Aftershock is a graphic novel company, Aftershock's comics. Aaron Colite, who had been a mentor of Start With 8, developed a virtual writer's room. 8 women of color came together and created a graphic novel. And Aaron Colite is, a showrunner for, Star Trek Discovery and so many other shows. And Amy was working with the publicist over at Aftershock, and they came up with something and they started pitching it. And Amy's like, yeah, this isn't going, it's not doing what we thought it was, what we wanted it to do, right? And they were like, well, we'll try, right? The white publicist. And Amy and I are like, we'll see. And he's like, I can't believe I can't get anybody other than like Screen Rant and some of the graphic novels, the people cover graphic novels. They couldn't get it in their major publications that they were used to being able to get it into. And that's because nobody cared about this Black run organization, this for Women of Color Unite, right? Like all of these women of color. And that just goes to show you that, even the white folk were like, I don't understand why they're not picking this up. And me and I were like, because we Black and Indigenous and Latinx, that's why. And also to that point, I just want to say, for everybody out there, right? Get yourself a Black publicist, get yourself a Black attorney. We have a Black attorney, we have a Black publicist. Like there's no other person for me, especially Black women, that I would rather have who understand what we go through. Right. And I watched it firsthand with the white publicists at Aftershock, who were like, just couldn't believe that nobody was picking up this story. As opposed to having Amy by my side, we understood, we knew what we had to do. And this idea of having this shock that somehow somebody's not picking up this story. And we're like, we Black. Right. And having Amy by my side did actually take the sting out of it, because I knew what we were up against. So just shout out to Amy, but that is the problem with a lot of white publicists when you have them and you are not an A-lister. Like they put out something and they just think that it's gonna hit and it doesn't. And they don't understand. They also don't understand what you're going through, knowing that it doesn't hit, right? Like and I can actually say this, like it hurts. It absolutely hurts. And if I don't have a Black woman specifically standing beside me and holding my hand, it would have made it that much worse.
And Cheryl, to your point, I can say I do an event at Sundance for the past 5 years. We've done this event. I've been involved for the last 3 years, and I've seen the event grow. But in that, because I'm one of the coordinators of the event, I didn't do the PR for it. But we would hire, we hired two different PR firms, and they came in and they weren't all, they were white and Black, but they didn't have the Black person in the forefront. They had the Black person in the forefront when we would do the interviews. But then once the project was underway and they were moving forward with it, we would realize, and I would realize, because this is what I do, that person was there just to get the job so that they could get, hired on to do it. But they have no clue what to do with this event. And I saw for myself the way that it was being pitched, the way, although we had, it's Sundance, we were one of the few people there that had, a nice venue, great food, great panelists. I mean, we had Ruth Carter, Oscar-winning costume designer. I'm sorry. We had Niecy Nash. Our musical guest was Anderson .Paak, SWV. We would have all these great people, and then these publicists would come back with Source Magazine or Vibe or someone like that. And in our head, I would have to go back. Where's Variety? Where's Deadline? Where's Hollywood Reporter? Where are these other publications? But they never even thought to pitch it to those publications because they pigeonhole it into one little category. So you can have these huge stars, and when you don't have someone that looks like you, sometimes they still don't know how to sell you. They don't know how to sell your project. They don't know how to sell your event. So I tell anyone, I'm sorry, I don't care what your team looks like. You need to have someone that looks like you, because no one else can sell you like a Black person can, because they don't know the experience. They don't know the story. They don't know, you're not one dimensional. You don't only have to go to Essence, Ebony, Source, Vibe. It just makes no sense. Black Enterprise, it makes no sense, but they don't see the value. They don't think that it can be sold to anyone other than that, unless you are Will Smith, unless you are Viola Davis, unless you are Denzel Washington. And we've got to get out of that. When we have people who are artists, who are talent, and they are moving up in the ranks, and they have a Black publicist as they are moving up. But then when they get there, all of a sudden the studios and everyone is suggesting that they go with the larger agencies. We need people who are heads of these projects, who are the writers, the directors, the producers, the talent, to say, no, I need this publicist who worked with me to get me here. That person is going to stay. Now, if you want to bring somebody else on, that's fine. But this person is going to stay, a part of my project and anything that I do. It's very important.
Allies are also very important. That's because allies will have your back. When I was representing Ludacris during Crash Oscar season, every single week at his major agency, his agent had to tell them, because they would say, why can't we get him with a real publicity firm? Why is he with this young no-name publicist? And she would say, she booked him on the Oscars. He won't take a meeting. And she was in that room, in that major agency, having my back in that way. So it is also about building your allies across the way, Black, white, female. I admit, I have actually said at different points, why would you trust those that will drop or stab you in the back? At the end of the day, this is where you got to come from it. Unfortunately, I'm an only child and my parents don't need publicity. So everybody is open to interpretation until after a couple of decades. And even then, when food is on the table and somebody has got a child, I don't have a child. I can starve alone, but somebody else will happily shank me in the back to make sure that they feed their child. And I know that. So I'm not taking it personal like that, especially in this dog eat dog world. But I do have certain allies that they know that if they have my back, that I'll have their back, and they know that their way will be easier. Because I've been working red carpets and at the front of open guest lists since Jermaine Dupri in 1994. And I'm still at some of these red carpets and open guest lists. And you never know where she's going to pop up. So your allies also that you're going to build in behind the scenes, the agents, the managers, all of those touch tones that you never know. Those people also, they are also invaluable when you can get those 5 to 10 nuggets. It won't be a whole bunch. You'll have a billion acquaintances, a whole bunch of associates. Yes, character does matter. Unfortunately, name me someone pure of character, and Michelle Obama doesn't count. Because right now we are in tricky days where a whole bunch of people, I just had a group of girlfriends where one of them was actively helping her agent to try and steal one of her friend's clients. She wasn't actively stealing the client, but she was helping her agency because that was, now this is 2 decades of friendship. And her agency has given her, hey, if you want to feed you and your 3 kids, this is what you got to do. What is my girlfriend going to say? You know, at 54 with 2 kids going to college and another one coming out of high school. So unfortunately, yeah, I do believe in that. But if you build a strong group of allies who you recognize that we're all swimming in the same direction, and we've got a couple of decades of, hey, you got my back. I gave you Janet Jackson that one time when you really, really needed her on that red carpet. And then you gave me Ludacris 10 years later. And then I gave you, it really does become a matter of building those strong relationships and putting your allies in your ally Rolodex and just maintaining that, even if you only check in twice a year.
By the way, for those that are a little bit young, a Rolodex literally was a bunch of cards with people's names, addresses, and phone numbers on that rolled. Because I know some of y'all are young.
That is so funny.
So I want to get a little bit messy. What is the weirdest place that you've had to do damage control, like airport bathroom, wedding reception, SpaceX launch?
Hands and knees cleaning up Andre Harrell's toilet 10 minutes before an Entertainment Tonight crew was on his way to his house up in Hollywood Hills when he first took over Motown. The bathroom was a mess because he'd had a birthday party the night before, and needless to say, yeah, it looked like a team of homeless children had run in right after they'd been to Disneyland all day eating churros.
Amy?
I'm thinking, what is the worst?
Or the strangest. Just doesn't have to be the worst. It could just be strange.
Ooh, I will say maybe when I was working the Steve Harvey morning show, and we were doing a remote with the Shy, with the talent from the Shy, with the cast of the Shy. And at the time, Idris Elba wasn't, he wasn't Idris then. He wasn't as huge as he is now, but he was the one that everyone wanted to see. And crowd was there for Idris, and we had everyone else there, all of the other cast, but Idris wasn't going to come. And so, Wood Harris is sitting there like, why am I sitting here for this shit? They only want to see Idris, and they were screaming Idris. They were, they were saying actually Stringer, Stringer, Stringer. And we're online, we're on air, and Stringer Bell wasn't going to be there. We had the rest of the people, but to get the cast decided they really weren't going to say anything. Everybody wanted to see, Idris. So they just kind of went silent and wouldn't answer any questions, really, nothing. And anyone who's worked in radio, silence is deadly. And so we had to, at that time, kind of soften up the rest of the cast and get them to, want to talk to, it was just, when I say it was a a mess. It was literally trying to not have just dead air and try, we have people out here for a remote wanting to ask questions, but they only wanted to ask questions to Stringer Bell at that time. So I will say that was one time where it was just a hot mess trying to move forward. And then I was working with talent on R&B Divas is a reality show that used to be on, and I used to represent Miss Chalet. And I'd always known her to be just, she was fine. She would work. She would show up on time, and I never had the problem with her not showing up. And then all of a sudden, we're there taping the finale, and there's no Miss Chalet. And I knew she was across the street at the hotel, preparing to come, but she's another who just I go over there and it's just a complete mess. Just wasn't ready. We have a whole audience ready to move at the House of Blues. Everyone's ready to tape, but we have my artist completely done, just laying there, not in makeup, not ready to, camera ready, nothing. And so trying to put together a person in 15 minutes and get them in front of the camera and have them camera ready. That means helping them get clothes on. That means helping them, try to stand up straight and all of that. And the makeup team, getting them together. I think that was the biggest shit show. I think I'm cursing more than Cheryl today, but that was the biggest mess, I would say for me, or that's one I can remember off the top of my head.
So how do you deal with a client that just refuses to not be embroiled in some form of a bizarro scandal every week? Like, how do you deal with a client that thrives on the negative energy or the, just they are such pick-me's that they always have to be in front of something, even if it is horrible?
You're fired.
That's the answer. But I love that you said that, Lana, because it's the truth. I think that you get to a certain place in your career and the experience that you have where you can I'm not dealing with this nonsense. I'm not going to fight harder for your career than you will. So if you don't want it, you're fired. I'm good. I will step away from someone very quickly now.
I actually let a client so agitate me that I internalized it and gave myself an eye stroke in both eyes. So now you're fired, period.
Yowza. Okay. What's the one PR trick that always works, even though it shouldn't, but it still to this day is still working?
Lana, I'm going to give that one to you. I'm not quite sure.
For me, it's, I don't sign clients now unless I have a couple of sure things. So it's that first hit. And when you get that first hit and they're like, you only have that chance to make that first impression. So I always have, for me, I always have one or two sure things. I've talked to reporters, friends, editors, and all that. Like, hey, if I sign this person, are you going to give me some love? So for me, it's probably, the trick is being prepared. When I'm going to pull you on, I'm going to be prepared that I can do something. I no longer hope that I can create. I always have a good idea of the direction I want to take you in, but more importantly, that I'm going to be able to pull some things out. And I know that, a publicist can never, ever, ever truly promise you anything. Any more than, and I always tell my clients, the only people who can promise you something is a liar and an editor. And even sometimes an editor becomes a liar. So back during the day when Denzel Washington was supposed to have the cover of Newsweek for Hurricane, I believe it was, he didn't get the cover because I think that there was something happened with that in Atlanta. There were some bombings or something like that. So he was relegated to 8 pages inside. Now, I know his publicist, Alan, and I know that they had that discussion. But at the end of the day, yes, you're promised the cover, but you're not going to get the cover because we have something more important. So, I always kind of think of that, but for me, it's always good. Have a couple of irons in the fire because getting that first hit, if you don't get it within those first couple of months of them paying you, then you got to hear it. And depending upon how they come at it, the next thing they're hearing from me is you're fired, because I'm not taking too much shit.
Yeah, and I, even to piggyback on that, for me right now, I only work with people who have some kind of team, whether it be a manager, an agent, a good attorney. You have to have somebody other than just a publicist, because if I'm everything, if I've found that when I sign someone that doesn't have someone else on their team, then all of a sudden I become manager, I become agent, I become babysitter, I become car washer, I become dog sitter, I become everything to them. I become their stylist, all of that. And for me, that doesn't work at all. So if I consider, if when people are interested in hiring, if I know, my superpower, I know when I can work with someone and they have a project or something that we are ready to promote. If I feel like I can do they have something that I can work with, then for me that's what I look at, and I can't guarantee I can get them something, but if I can look and see, okay, they have something for me to work with and somebody to work with on their behalf, then that's usually what works for me. I have people who sometimes just want a publicist. They don't have a project coming out. They haven't been in anything in a while. And it to me that doesn't work on my end. I need you to have something for me to work with. So I say having a manager, having an agent, having an attorney, having someone that I can build a strategy with and build a campaign with is my thing.
What about the opposite of that? Like, what's a tactic that used to work like magic when it came to publicity, but is completely useless now? For example, people messing up and doing their apology tours on social media that now has been done so many times it's insincere and nobody wants to hear your apology. What is something that used to work like magic, not working anymore?
I think for me, it's social media. It's a double-edged sword. At the end of the day, social media used to be focused and you could actually build. And I just see we're moving into this whole content creator. You still have, Black artists, what is it, 35%, and 35% of the deals that their white counterparts are getting. So you already have structural being built into that. Social media is that double-edged sword. And there's so many positive aspects to it, but then it cuts both ways because the pie is so large that, for example, I was just watching a great piece on Matt Damon, and he was breaking down, if I want to do a $25 million independent movie now, in order to get the word out, I've got to spend $25 million just for the marketing, the M&A budget. So since when has $50 million ever been considered in a small independent film? We're no longer doing that. So I think that, the measurements of so many of these things have changed, that social media, which became a way for people to become a part of community, has now looped into America first, consumerism, me only. And you hear so much of how now it's a legacy piece. And when it stopped being community, and now it's just about each person being able to build. It's about a scientist going on a reality show, getting 2 million on TikTok and quitting that science job so that they can now be a content creator. There are just so many things out there. I think that social media is also that double-edged sword, that you used to be able to count on it to be able to, oh my gosh, so-and-so's on Twitter. Oh my gosh, so-and-so's on such and such. Oh my goodness. And I had a whole bunch of things. I had a wonderful Twitter account that, although it was only 3,000 people, at least 80 to 90% of that was reporters from around the world. Journalism. That's what I used it for. And as it started being taken over and more by the politics, and I couldn't keep my mouth shut, I had to turn it off, Because according to even Jelani Cobb right now, the head of Columbia Journalism, if I open my mouth, I will be in trouble. That's what we're teaching our journalists. So I think social media, honestly, is that you used to be able, when it first came out, you could count on it because it was another microphone to community, and it was another open community. And now it has siloed as sure as the propaganda news has.
And I just wanted to say, again, I said it earlier, shout out to Christopher Boosie, seriously, for creating Spottable and making it a place where we can do what we used to do, right? To get the word out, creating this community, because it is a community. I have noticed that I now get more engagement here on Spottable than I get on Instagram, even though I have more followers than Instagram, right? And it's because there's such a plethora of stuff. But the people who belong to Spottable are looking for the things that the community has to offer, which is why we do these pods every couple of weeks, because I really want to put in a push for Black Hollywood to come over to the Black-owned app to get the engagement that we didn't used to see. So I just wanted to give, Boosie some more flowers now that we are, talking about this, talking about engagement, talking about all of these things, because you're absolutely right, Lana. I deleted my ex thing, because it just wasn't what it was. I had 5,000 followers, but it was very curated. And then it was like people would find me and, getting doxxed in the death. And I was like, I don't need any of that. Right.
Well, Cheryl, to be fair, you pissed off both sides of every conversation. So every conversation you would piss off both sides.
Amy, keep quiet.
She worked hard to get that. Yes.
Amy has had to pull my coattails a couple of times. But on the same hand, Amy, back in the day, we did remember when, the woman who, called me racist or whatever, and then a bunch of the white female-led groups, they partnered with her. Amy put out a press release. The press didn't pick it up, but we dropped it on Twitter. And woo, child, that was a lot. So, we did actually have some great engagement from the causes that we wanted. But no, Amy has had to pull my coattails on a couple of occasions.
And I you're right, Cheryl. But, but I think that, Cheryl, that's your superpower is speaking truth, your truth. And people know you for that. And so that's what is expected. And no, we know that everybody's not going to be happy. And we know that there's going to be pushback, and we're prepared for it prior to that. So that it's okay. You keep doing what you do. But to answer the question one thing I will say is our lack of Black media and what we used to have a plethora of platforms for, to make sure that we could talk about, different projects, or if there was crisis management that needed to be done, we were able to book our clients on, you can say that apology tour or whatever it might be, or coming back to your Black community. The lack of Black media now and Black media outlets, it's hurting us. It really is hurting. We used to have Right On magazine, Source magazine. You had just all these different platforms, and then we had the different interview shows on BET and TV One and different things. And, those platforms are not there anymore. So I think that to me is one thing that I used to be able to count on, that no longer, it's a little more difficult now, and it's not as prevalent as it was in the past.
So someone asked with regards to Spoutable and today's market. Today's market, because there are so many, today's market is really about the meaningful partnerships. One thing that I will say is, in my career, I have always respected Black publications. I have been in 2 magazines, and I am a firm believer, the way I was brought up, that if you're a publicist and you're in the picture with your clients, then your client's face is anywhere 12 to 36 BPI smaller. So who are you really publicizing? So I don't ever get into the pictures with my clients. But I have twice in my career, and the reasons why they were used is because I basically said, use something else. And they said, no, your clients won't be in it unless you're in the picture with them. The first time was with Sydney Miller and BRE. So kudos to you, Amy.
Hey,
Second
I
time
love
was Vanity Fair. I had taken Bill Duke. And that's because in the last 15 years of my career, what I discovered was, as a Black female publicist, it's honestly, I get calls from Vanity Fair back before I get calls from Ebony, Essence, and Jet. And maybe it's just their numbers, but my clients have been in there, but it's always been an uphill battle. So I know that for the last 2 decades, I personally have had more of a reputation of Lana. Lana can get you in the Vanity Fair before she can get you in Ebony or Essence. So I think that with regards to something like Spoutable, Spoutable needs to go where they are. And where they are seem to be is 25 of them crammed in a bathroom at Vanity Fair. Where they are seems to be, crammed on the Met Gala platform. So those are all viable places where Spoutable to me is an open air forum. And I love everything that's going. And especially, I agree with you, Cheryl, on getting your numbers better from here, because I get annoyed. I turned off my notifications for IG because there's somebody going live like every 20 minutes, and and if their name's not D Nice, they're going live every 10 minutes. So I think that for something like this with the ground, it really is about going to where they are and forcing these conversations to be had, because they're having these conversations. They're just having them on the spot with, some IG blonde girl who, happens to be best friends with the DJ.
Well, I'm happy to say that at Women of Color Unite, we have been partnering with Spoutable. Obviously, I actually consider Christopher Boozy like a little brother that I never really wanted, but I guess that I did. So I'm very happy, and I love the community. I love Stop It Boozy. I love the community here, and I do. I want to bring more of us in the entertainment spot, obviously, over here. But let's get messy, because we got about 22 minutes left. Nicci, let's get messy.
Okay. Have you guys ever gotten revenge on a difficult journalist? Somebody that wasn't playing nice with your client, so you got revenge on them?
Yes, immediately. It was lovely. I've gotten long-term and short-term. I had one person who, and here's the thing is, for me, it's not personal about that, but what you try to let the talent know is, especially when you're dealing with A-list talent, the top of the top, you're dealing with the Tom Cruises and the John Travoltas and, the Angela Bassett's and the Halle Berrys and Janet Jacksons and, and the Lenny Kravitz and everything like that. When you get them at the front, you kind of make a deal with them. Or that's the way I would always do. They're not going to do the entire red carpet. But what you don't want them doing is walking by, like with Sterling K. Brown, talking about, oh, the Black people are at the back of the carpet and I didn't stop there. Oops. You don't want that to happen as well. So I remember I was on a Grammy carpet. And what I would always do is ask the talent, okay, so, if we're going to do the carpet, how many are you willing to give me? You're going to give me a couple of TV, a couple of radio, photos only, but what are we doing here? And that was with anybody from, like I said, Janet Jackson, Tupac, Machine Gun Kelly, Brooks and Dunn, whoever I was walking down. And she was like, okay, we can do 3. And we came up with 3. And so it was like, oh, okay, so you want to do, and I named the 3. Well, earlier on I had been, and I don't believe in trading clients like, hey, if you do this client for me, then I'll do this. I believe at the end of the day, You should do it because of my relationship, because of who I am, because you never know who I'm going to be bringing you next time. That's the way that I was kind of brought into it. So I don't really barter clients. But I will go down and I'm there an hour before to check with you and say, hey, I'm going to be bringing people down. Do you want my clients or not? And someone had said, had kind of waved me away and been like, Lana, listen, I've already got my people. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to help you at all. Didn't even want to hear my client's name. And so I walked my younger client down and, gave him the nod and, they like to look away so that they don't catch your eye and they don't catch the talent's eye or anything like that. Some of them will even turn their back on you if they're rude enough. And so he looked away. And then, of course, I'm walking down Janet Jackson and we have done her Entertainment Tonight, Access and E. And, he's screaming, Lana, Lana, Lana. And what I always do is I always walk on the other side so that the artist is not looking towards the camera. They're looking towards me so that I'm letting them know and I'm talking to them and I'm keeping there. So then that way they don't look rude, like they looked at somewhere and just didn't walk over to them. And he called me over afterwards and he was like, I can't believe you. And I said, listen, at the end of the day, we had 3 outlets, that we could get to, 3 outlets and photos before she's got to be in by her seat. And the difference is I'm not going to advocate for your outlet to be one of the 3. If you don't take care of me and it's just okay. So that's the other thing. And he was a secondary source and it was a good source. It wasn't a live hit and it was a good source, but I only have 3. So I'm not going to advocate for you. And it's kind of the same principle as guest lists. Whenever I was on the guest list, I would say, listen, I'm working a guest list. So yes, I get a certain amount of buddies of mine, quite frankly. That's why I work these guest lists at the front. But at the end of the day, you're not going to come up and be some, associate or colleague and be like, hey, Lana, you should be like, no. I have got like 10, 15 people I can let in. You're not in there. You're not in my number. So how dare you be offended when I'm never in your number? So, I think that in our industry, you kind of have to set your boundaries and set, who you're going to be, how you're going to be. And so I've never mean-spiritedly gone after or anything like that. But what I have recognized is, when you have access like we do, and knowing that they're not going to talk to everyone, my personal bias is going to come into play if I'm going to advocate for 3 outlets and you don't want to talk to my people. By the same token, I have said to Kevin at Entertainment Tonight, hey, Kevin, let's not stop at Entertainment Tonight because you're not going to air it. And you're going to waste 10 minutes of my time on this red carpet. And my client doesn't want to be here for all this time. So let me please just skip Entertainment Tonight, knowing you're not going to air it. So you really got to know who the people are. And I think once you know that, then for me, they knew I'm on your side. The only reason why I'm with this client is because they're paying me. But if not, I would be across the street with popcorn, just with the rest of the fans. So I want for my press, I'm on their side and they know I advocate for them first and foremost. But, revenge, there's been those little moments where you're like, I might have advocated for you a little bit harder, but next time, maybe.
That's funny because you talking about that just kind of takes me to some of the reporters can be very rude. Just as you said, they can be rude to the talent that they're not that enthused about speaking to. But I'm one who feels like, if I have in the past been generous or placed you in a really good place on a red carpet so that you could, get access to those A-listers or have pushed for you to be one of the first outlets for them to speak to. If I have somebody that I need you to speak to, me personally, I do. I will say, hey, I'm bringing down someone and I want, this is what she's working on. This is what this person is working on. And I'd love for you to speak to him for a moment. And I just remember a couple of years ago at the Pan African Film Festival, everyone wanted to speak to Jonathan Majors, and Jonathan was walking down with his team from the studio, and the studio publicist, was just very specific about, we only want to talk to this person, we only want to talk to this person, and maybe there were two or three, and there was one particular outlet that was very rude to some of the other talent that was walking down the red carpet, and I don't mind, you having, an outlet having specific people they want to speak to. I do mind when they are rude to people and when they are disrespectful to artists or producers or directors who are coming up, especially at an indie film festival. I don't tolerate disrespect like that. So, as Jonathan was coming down, his people were saying, hey, he's only going to talk to the major outlets. And so Jonathan saw, just these other outlets there, and it was a whole row of them. And he's like, why are we not talking to them? And he asked me specifically, and I said, well, your publicist said that, that you guys had a time limit and you couldn't speak to him. And he said, no, I'm going to speak to every one of these media outlets if they're interested in talking to me. And so the one person that was rude to everyone was like in the middle, and he wasn't he wasn't over where Jonathan was speaking of. So as we were walking, I walked past that person, and I walked past that person purposely because I felt, I just don't like anyone to walk away from a carpet that I'm doing and feel that they have been, feel deflated or devalued in any way. So I didn't stop him there. And this was a time where, Jonathan, before he had the issues, and he was the biggest thing coming up. And so he walked down and he spoke to everyone on that carpet, including the smallest outlet. And that one reporter that had been rude the entire time and the entire festival to different people, we skipped them. And that was, for me, I didn't feel anything about it. I felt like, once it was over, I went back, I talked to him, and I explained to him, I don't allow, I ask that you not be disrespectful. You don't have to speak to everyone, but let's let everybody feel like they are valued, and just, you can pass gracefully on people with no problem, but not just shun them on like they're nothing. So that's my little story. Yes, I have invoked revenge on a reporter.
So, Cheryl, I do have one more question. We get messy here. So this is for both Lana and Amy. Uh, who- so who are more difficult to deal with, actors or music artists?
Music.
Lana, you want to say
I heard the term one-hit wonder outside of music. Only in music can you send something to a local radio show, and next thing you know, you got a 2-album deal, and some idiot is now getting paid $100,000 of recoupable money that they still haven't figured out. So for me, music. Although I will say sports is second, because when they started taking them from high school, they got stupider.
I agree, music. And for that very reason, I feel like, that the talent, a lot of times they really have worked on that craft for a while, and they've worked up to the level of success that they have. And it's not as quick to have an overnight success. I don't believe, although people think that there are overnight successes, it's very few. So, music, though, that you can have an overnight success, as Lana said. All of a sudden, you have this song or something, especially back in the day, it's playing on every radio station, and now this person is a star. And it may be one song that they have that everyone loves, and all of a sudden, they're big. They're idiots, but all of a sudden, they feel like they're the biggest thing in the world. So, yeah, I'll say music.
What about working with studios that have like a PR mega system within them? For example, like Disney, where they give all their kids PR training. Me and Cheryl just recently worked with Disney, and all of the stars of the Descendants have massive media training and everything. Like, how do you get them to be natural after that? And also a lot of when they are kids and they're growing up with this media training. What do you do when they like get away from being like protected by the studio and just become a little bit crazy? Like, you know, kind of like Miley did. Miley was very protected and then just went batshit, and she's come back. But there was that moment where she was like, I just want to be me.
I mean, I think that's also a Nepo baby thing, you know, because there's a difference between the Raven Simone Disney experience and the Miley Cyrus. And there's a difference between the Miley Cyrus Disney experience and the Hillary Duff. You know what I mean? So, you know, Miley was coming from her dad, achy breaky heart. Even I was doing that 2-step. So, you know, she had her breakdown as a musician and all of that stuff. It's going to flow from someplace different as opposed to, you know, a Zendaya. I'm always telling people nowadays, I sure wish Raven Simone had all those shots that Zendaya has, but she didn't. Those are things that are just coming to her now. You know, Disney didn't always do training. And you know, because I was there for my wife and kids, representing the eldest daughter. And let me tell you the difference between what Jennifer Freeman was getting from ABC and Disney when My Wife and Kids was huge versus what Kaylee Cuoco, who was on the John Ritter show right across from her, and which ones was getting invitations to the Disney premieres and which one wasn't. So I mean, I think that there are a lot of things with regards to kids. You know, having represented Lauren Conrad on MTV's the first season, actually, the second season of Laguna Beach, I was brought on by her father, actually, because that first season, you know, they were only paying attention to Kirsten, and so they were like, well, what about her? Only to discover that MTV shoved me out in 3 months, took it and took my show idea and all that stuff. And quite frankly, they don't like publicists for their independence. They don't want that. They want hot messes. Same thing with VH1s and the hip hops and all that stuff. So, you know, there's a huge difference with a Nepo baby who's going to go through her issues because mommy and daddy were in front of the camera and this one and that one. And I grew up going to the real Bel Air prep. So I've been surrounded by Nepo babies since Habiba Abdul-Jabbar walked into my 5th grade class. And it's a completely different thing than, you know, the parent who raises their kids, not quite Nepo, but I had a 12-year-old once I took to the Transporter premiere, the very first one. And I literally had the father ask me the next day, to which I then had to quit because the father asked me the next day. He had been through Entertainment Tonight. He'd been through every place that I got to interview, which I had pulled favors to interview his son, whose show was coming out 4 months later. And his son was the 5th lead of a family show on Fox. And no lie, dad called me the next day and said, we watched all those shows and my son, none of the interviews ran. So I don't know if you know what you're doing. And my response to him was, yeah, what interviews ran and which ones would you like for me to call? Because I watched the same thing. And the only interviews that ran from the Transporter premiere was the lead star, Jason Statham, his best friend, the director, Guy Ritchie, and Guy Ritchie's current star at the time, Brad Pitt. So if they ran those 3 interviews on all Entertainment Tonight Extra, all of those to do with the Transporter, which ones your son, David Henry from the Pits, who now plays Selena Gomez's brother on Wizards of Waverly, which one do you think he should have replaced? Now, Disney, of course, has done a lot and he's learned a lot now, but I was getting him when he was, you know, on the Fox and not quite trained and everything. And so teaching the kids at a very young age, I think there are certain things you take away the authenticity from some of that. And so many of them train kids, quite frankly, to give adult answers. I don't know, having never worked around either one of the Fanning sisters, I can't imagine, you know, coming up like that. I back during when I was coming up in the 90s and the 2000s, they weren't heartily training the kids like they did in the studio system. They had just basically gotten away from the studio system in the 70s and the 80s. So they weren't taking the kids and training them to sing, to dance, to act right, to do all of that. A lot of that is this social media stuff and the new dangers of social media. I think that's what that is. Are there kids who heard me before the parents? As far as, I mean, I've always, in representing the kids, I always, even when I worked with Little Bow Wow, I met his mom, Teresa, first. So if I'm going to be representing your kid, then if I'm going to be out there with your kid and around your child, just as a form of parenting, I do believe that you should know me. So I've never worked with underage performers and not met their parents and or their guardian.
Now, like advice wise, or would listen to you before they listen to their parents?
You know what? I never disassociated the two. I always made sure that the parents understood. And when the parents are divas, I did the same thing that I did with clients. You're fired. At the end of the day, there is nothing worth my peace of mind and the agita. It's already uphill. There are too many slots. And as we move, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Amazon, Netflix, and all the studios and whatnot just banded together to make an announcement that after the success of Mr. Beast on Amazon, they're going to focus on content creation and trying to really focus on content creators. And the studios and the networks are down. So what you're going to get is a hodgepodge of stuff that is going to be very, very personalized. I'm not going to say there aren't going to be some hits, but it's going to be very, very personalized. And when you start getting into that, you know, I never, ever, ever, having been a live-in nanny, I never want to take the responsibility of presenting something different from what their household will be presenting when I leave. So I never, ever, I've had people who, you know, are definitely like, well, you know, I want to listen to you. My mom doesn't. And I'm like, listen, no. Let me sit down there with mom as well. Because mom needs to know this, you know, just like your parents needed to, you know, go to school with you for the PTA. It's a family who raises you, and it's your community around you that's going to keep you from ODing at age 14. So I've never separated the two, which has probably been some of my issue, in so much as I've always insisted that the parent's parent. That's not my job, and I'm not going to take it. And I've been a live-in nanny twice, so I know something of what the job entails, and I'm just not going to do that for you.
I personally, I haven't worked with underage children. I haven't worked with anyone under 18. I'm trying to think. In my whole career, I've always worked with adults, so I don't really have an answer to that question. But I think Lana did a great job answering it. I've just never had to have to deal with minors in my situation.
As we get ready to wrap this up, I want to touch on the Blake Lively, Justin Baldon thing. And one of the reasons is that you guys may not know it, but Christopher Boozy was just on 60 Minutes Australia as the tech expert talking about bots. Don't even Christopher Boozy, talking about bots and this case. And then I think he is also in a documentary that will be coming out later on, talking about bots and everything that's going on. So in that respect, for our last few minutes, especially since I believe the publicists are actually being sued as well, what are your thoughts on this mess in Hollywood? Lana first, then Amy.
Team Baldoni. I mean, I think it's a mess because she got several of the highfalutin propagandic press, quite frankly, to come after him in an effort to bury him. She flexed and it failed. And, you know, unfortunately, her reputation wasn't stellar in the industry to begin with. And so when you look at all the people now who seem to be moving to the center, that once again is, as a publicist, it's the narrative, and it's the she came out with powerhouse narrative, and then he came out and busted everything down with the truth and photographic evidence, and you know, and now she's backstepping, and the industry is going to allow that. I personally hope they go balls to the wall, and that he, you know, and that she has to give him an apology. Does that mean anything? No, it won't. And she and Ryan will still do what they're, you know, will still have their. But in my opinion, they literally, after the bad press with her, because I saw it go around, they came after him. They thought they would bury him, and he just refused to die. And I don't like bullies. I never have. So I'm the type of person to step in to seeing somebody being bullied. So I'm Team Baldoni, and they have yet to come up with anything to combat his combative evidentiary proof. So if you're going to come out and say, you know, he came into my trailer when I was breastfeeding, and then there's a text saying, come on by, I'm just, you know, breastfeeding right now, and everything, like everything so far has been proven by him to be a lie and to be a malicious, something malicious that she did to try to bury him. So I don't like the bully. And so far, everything that she has said has been disproven. And so to me, I'm Baldoni.
Which is why I was like asking at the beginning, because it seems like such a PR disaster that, you know, how are you going to like spew this forward when you know that there is evidence out there that can, you know, the backup evidence that you're lying. And at this point, it doesn't matter what she says, because everybody's going to assume she's a liar first.
I mean, she, at the end of the day, it's not going to hurt her. It doesn't matter. It's like knowing our president is a felonious rapist. It didn't hurt him. So we're not in any sort of societal emotional feeling or anything like that, that this is going to hurt her. It was never going to hurt her. That's why he's fighting for his life. That's why he's putting out the pictures. That's why he's not going to give it up. That's why, you know, exactly, spew it forward instead of play it forward and whatnot, because she didn't get what she wanted. And so, you know, little things are dripping out now of the people. Oh, she tried to take, you know, but saying, you know, he tried to show me a nasty video and whatnot. It's like, wait a minute, he was at Video Village showing everybody this video of his wife while you guys discuss the scene. Like, everything's been put into context. And so the presupposition of her being a mean girl, quite frankly, if you go back, she already had that presupposition after the second traveling sisterhood pants. If you look back at those pictures, there are no pictures with the 4 girls. That's because she showed up to the red carpet 30 minutes after the 3 other girls showed up to do red carpet together. So she's had that reputation since then. So, you know, her trying to basically throw him under a bus to save herself. Look at the pictures now of this simple favor that she's doing. There's a great picture with her, Henry Golding, and Anna Kendrick, and the two of them are so obviously not smiling, and she is grinning her head off, and she just looks horrible. So I think, you know, the generation that just loved her is going to, you know, put together that he dogged Alanis Morissette, that he, you know, couldn't deal with Scarlett Johansson's career being bigger than his, and that he may not be the nice guy, which she was getting a lot of the flow off. So, you know, as far as assaulted before, at the end of the day, we have a president who has been, so I don't think, she hasn't come out with that. She just came out with sexual assault after the bad press started coming out about her. So timing wise, what she said, every story that she put in the New York Times that has been disproven through pictures, video, and other people. Yeah. No, Serena was a little bit kinder. She's more like Blair and Chuck. So that's my thinking on it. I don't know. She's not going to be harmed. He's fighting for the rest of his career, though. And I like to call it the Hollywood sperm pot, because pretty much everybody works with everybody. And you can bet that you will be on a set with someone that your wife or your ex-boyfriend had contact with 10 years ago.
Let me ask you one question. That how is it that some things never go away? Like some narratives never go away, no matter how many years it's been. Like, for example, Justin Bieber, Haley, Selena, the whole thing just won't go away, which is the same thing like Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston. Those like narratives just don't seem to go away no matter what these people do. Is it just that we love these people, these characters, or like
Money.
what is it?
Clicks. Who's doing? Here's the thing: is when you say that, then I say Meghan Markle. That's why every day there's 10 to 15 articles that are put out that shows Meghan Markle doing something that you also see Kate doing, and how Meghan is doing it as a cry for a plea for help for the whole world to be watched. I mean, like literally, it's for clicks. And since social media created an algorithm based on hate versus based on love, I liken it to the Monsters Universe movie and whatnot. You know, we are now living in a society where hate is the fuel. I liken it almost also to Ghostbusters, the first movie with pink slime underneath, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and people are looking for it. Yes, it's mainlining. It's every single morning you get up and you look at the news, and the news isn't the news, because the news is telling you, hey, here's 70% of hate. Okay, and there's 7%, and then, oh, there's something good that happened, but we can't really tell you. So, you know, that's why I said that's the one thing that I do agree with our current president on, that the mainstream has become the enemy of the people. They are propagandistic. There is no left. If you look at it this way, right after the election, what I noticed was there's a propensity, and someone will do a study 5 years from now, where there's no positivity. The news, the quote unquote left-wing news, there is no left-wing news. And the left-wing news for a month after Kamala lost was telling you maybe that the Democrats did not get their message out without taking responsibility for not putting any positive messages, putting it back on them, and also started suggesting to them that they create their own silo like Fox News. Now, I was watching this, and as I'm watching this, I'm amazed, because here's the thing is, mainstream media, who's claiming that you're left stream media, but telling the Democrats that they need their own silo. See, you keep telling them that they need their own silo because Fox News only lies. But if you're telling them that they need their own silo, then you're admitting you don't tell the truth. Oops. So they stopped that narrative, mainstream media, because they realized it was telling on themselves. So when you look at the percentage, and they always do one good story, there'll be one good story, but one good story in a 0.02 percentile of your entire news. How is Morning Joe considered news when it's 5 hours of news and they repeat the same stories every hour? That's not news. So, you know, you change the word like woke. I'm sorry, but if you want to use the word woke with me, you need to be able to at least have a 5-minute conversation about Leadbelly and his song. Because if you don't, then I'm going to stop you and tell you your ignorance is not my job to decipher. I don't want to hear it. Unless you're going to tell me that you know about Leadbelly, and you know about Sundance Towns, and you know about what he meant, because that's what it meant. I don't care that Jane Fonda wants for it to mean that you care about people. I want the original meaning of my word back, because you don't know how to use it and you misuse it and you're going to use it against me. So no, we have, I think, especially as Black people at this time, we have so much power to give and share. I think we need to find a different way to share it. And I personally want to become an ally to someone because I want more than one white woman named Viola to have died. Because if you know your history, then you know that during the Civil War, there's really only one white woman who died. Her name was Viola. She was killed on accident by the local KKK. And that specific group was immediately put out of business because they killed that white woman. So until there are more white women out there dying for my cause and whatnot, not a white man, absolutely everything, but until they're out there, I want to be their ally as the poor people, as Bernie and AOC are out there. I want to be their ally. I want to help them because I fought for them enough. And now it's their time for me to have their back.
Well, that was a whole last word. Woo, child. Amy, do you want to take on the Justin Baldoni and let Blake Lively?
Okay, I'm going to be very honest with you. I checked out of that story way back when. I had no interest at all in it. So I'm not qualified to tell you anything about it. Don't know anything about it at all. I just had no interest in Blake Lively or just any of it. So that's just being honest with you. But I wanted to tell you, Cheryl and Nicci, thank you guys so much. I have a screening this evening and I've got to hop off to prepare for that screening. But this has been a great platform. Please continue to do these type of things because we do need it. We need our voices to be heard. We need experiences to be shared from people like Lana. And I'm here for you anytime you need it. But this has been great. And thank you, everyone. I appreciate you. Please keep doing this, Cheryl.
We will. And why don't we work with Spottable to put out some press releases? Amy, Christopher Boozy, about what we are doing in the community that we are building over here in our entertainment pods. So yeah, look for that email. We'll put out something, and I'm sure Lana will also share it. Bring over your Black clients. Let's do more of these pods over here. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. And Lana, you are awesome. It was great being on Unspeaking and doing this with you.
Absolutely loved being a part of this and being with you as well. I think we need voices out there because at the end of the day, we're not going to do it alone. And the community, we're either going to come together as a community or we're going to divide and pocket. I'm ready for both, but I'm hoping that it's going to do as a community.
We are, and I'll let you and Amy know all of the pods that happen here on Spottable. And I'm really putting in a push, Nicci and I, and thank you, Nicci, because Nicci always does all of the questions, to bring more of us over here. It is a much safer space. I think the safest space for us over here on Spottable. Let's do more of these. Bring your clients over. Let's talk about projects. Let's talk about, everything that everybody has going on, and continue to build our community. And girl, you know how much I love you, Lana.
Anything you need. I am, because I don't have the kids, I am putting myself out there as a resource and an asset for these next generations. I'm out. In about 20 years, I figure I'll be tapping out. I'm 50 now. I don't want to go too much past 70. I'm already old and crotchety, figuring out which one of the old gentlemen in the balcony from the Muppets I'm going to be. But I hope that you guys,
I'm Statler.
really just take this for everybody has their own path. But one thing that I always hope to impart is that your path is your own, and it doesn't matter if it's part, Sidney Poitier, part Angela Bassett, part crackhead from New Jack City. I don't care what it is. Your path is exactly that. And walk with your head held high, no matter where you're going, no matter what you're doing. When you walk in that room like that, people have to look. And it's just an attitude. And I think right now, what they're trying to do is to intimidate us. And I promise you, I I won't be intimidated until my last breath. It's just not in me to let anyone take that sense of security, that sense of belonging away from me. So what I hope each one of you will take is through these stories, yeah, we can be messy. And guess what? Blake will go on. Baldoni will go on. All of these people will go on. America will go on with or without democracy and everything like that, as it did for hundreds of years before that Columbus creature brought all of these murderous white people. So, just take your own sense of power and roll with that. That's what I always want to partake. And that's what I always tell Cheryl, like, yo, here's a room you need to be in. Because for me, there's no room that I don't belong in on this planet. This is my planet. I am American. But when I went to Costa Rica, I was still on planet Earth, and I owned myself there as well. When I went to Saudi Arabia, when I went on a tour with Admiral McMullen and the Joint Chief of Staff on Air Force Two to go to Iraq, to go to Afghanistan, to go to Kosovo, to go to war-torn places that are on the news and everything like that, to visit our people, it was always with the presupposition of I am my own person walking in. So that's what I would say to you is I have walked this and I've had great relationships and I've been treated with, like I said, I was treated with disrespect by Boys to Men, but treated with respect by Harvey Weinstein. So you demand it. You go into every situation knowing that your 2 feet, I don't care who you're in there with, with the exception of I may bow down for God and Jesus. But outside of that, I'm not, I'm walking in and owning it. So I hope that you'll take that. And Chris, this is an amazing thing. I do hope that, and Cheryl knows my Rolodex is open, that you guys will expand on this and really take this as an opportunity. We've got 2 to 3 good Black people at every studio and every network. Take this opportunity to go in there and demand your spaces within where they are so that you have access to all of their talent. Working with the African-American film critics, working with the Black reel critics, working with so many, the Alliance of Women Directors. We are niche groups. That's our power. So let's take that niche because we have voting power if we just harness it.
Thank you so much for that, Lana. Now y'all see why Lana Walker is my friend. Lana, Amy, I could not do what I do on no money at Women of Color Unite if it weren't for these Black women who have my back. I get texts throughout the year from Lana Walker that's like, you need to go to this. You need to go to this. She will send me an invite for something, get me on the list, and be like, you need to be in this room. And I could not do what I do without all of these Black women who have my back in Hollywood. So you know how much I love you, Lana Walker. And Christopher Boozy, I will be doing an email with Lana and with Amy. Let's partner. Let's continue to do what we do. And Lana is absolutely right. If she thinks you need to be in a room, Christopher Boozy, she's going to send you an invite and be like, be in that room, God dang it. So I want to thank everybody for our talk. We talked about dicks, pussy, ass, motherfuckers. Like, this was spilling the tea. Thank you. Nicci, I'm gonna let you have the last word because I could not do this without Nicci Freeman.
No. You had the last word when you said dicks, pussy, ass. I mean, like, where else am I supposed to go from that? Cock juggling thunder cunts?
My elbow just fell off the goddamn table. That is her favorite. That is her favorite insult. With that, I'm going to close out this room. Thank you all. We will be having a pod with Divas with Disabilities. They are launching a new series on Instagram. Boozy will also be talking about dropping it here. It has to do with celebrating Black women and other women of color with disabilities. You guys know that is a passion of mine. We will be talking to Black women and women of color with disabilities in Hollywood, how we're putting on a push because intersectional representation fucking matters. So please join us, our guests, the founders of Divas with Disabilities.
I will say one thing, Lana, if any of your clients want to be interviewed, feel free to send them on over.
I certainly will. Right now, I'm on the slight hiatus, having fired everybody. I needed a break. But but I have some people. I always keep in contact with folks and things like that. Yeah, every couple of years, I need a break. I need to have my summer off like I'm 12. But I do have definitely some people and some ideas. And I just think that, there's an opportunity for safe spaces and things like that to be integrated already into what's going on, So this has been my first time. This is a wonderful, this has been a wonderful experience. And I hope that Cheryl, you and I can definitely get together and, brainstorm and figure out how I can bring people to the table. I'll make calls. I don't have to know people. I'll bring them to the table anyway and just tell them they need to be in that room. So I would absolutely love this. This has been wonderful.
So with that, just remember, take this for the rest of your day. Dicks, pussy, and ass, motherfuckers. We out. Thank you very much. Bye.
The Women of Color Unite podcast is hosted by Cheryl L. Bedford and Nicci Freeman, produced by Nwabata Nnani, and edited by Lauren Bonett. The music is by Oh Yeah, featuring Nayuta. Subscribe to the Women of Color Unite podcast to never miss an episode. If you want to submit questions or responses to this episode, you can send them to podcast@woceunite.com. Find the show notes and transcripts for this podcast on our website at woceunite.org, where you can also learn more about Women of Color Unite and sign up to become a member for free and sign up for our monthly newsletter. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation. Donations are what enable us to create amazing programs like our #StartWith8 career development program. If you're on social media, you can follow the podcast at WOCU Podcast, and you can follow Women of Color Unite at WOCUnite.org.
Please stay tuned and join us for the next episode of the Women of Color Unite podcast, because we telling it like it is.
We need rebels and troublemakers to stand out, marginalized with voices making us so proud for identity in the industry. We all shout, so many women empowered making their own route. Like
ageism, racism, sexism.
Uncovered, they get together to form a force to prove the one that ain't gotta have a child to be seen as a mother. I'm saying,
all power
to the women of color. Yeah. It's just a salute to Cheryl Bedford, leading activist in the community. She's bridging the gap and bringing all women together to fight for real inclusion amongst all the diversities. Keep going.